Hello, I'm Rick Seaman for Veterans Network. I'm here in New York City at the headquarters for the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. And I'm here with the organization's founder and president, Mr. Paul Rieckhoff. Paul, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks
Welcome
for joining
home.
us. Thank you very much, man. Welcome to New York.
Good to be here.
Good to see you.
Good to be here. Paul, you served in Iraq, 3rd Infantry Division.
Right.
Infantry officer, platoon leader.
Right.
What year?
2003 to 2004, about the first year of the war. We were centered in Baghdad on the eastern bank of the Tigris River in a neighborhood called Iavc. But basically, the first 12 months of the war was our part.
Pretty intense time there.
Yeah. I mean, but I think all the times over there were intense.
Sure.
But it was intense because it was changing, and there was still not a lot of clarity, and folks were moving around. We didn't know how long we were going to be there. It wasn't kind of the steady rotations that you've got now. But I think anywhere you are in harm's way is pretty intense, at least till you get home and you get that first cold beer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's start at the beginning. The young Paul Rieckhoff, growing up, school, college. But what made Paul Rieckhoff decide to become an infantry soldier in an all-volunteer army?
Well, my father was drafted during Vietnam. He grew up in the Bronx here in New York and was drafted into the Army. My grandfather was drafted in World War II, spent 3 years in the South Pacific, and they told me don't join the Army and definitely don't join the infantry. So that's pretty much what I did. But I wanted to serve, I wanted to give back, I wanted to do something really hard, something that would really challenge me. And the more I learned about the Army, the more I realized that the infantry was what I wanted to do. I really wanted to be in the fight. I wanted to be leading men in combat at the tip of the spear. And I wanted to jump out of airplanes and blow stuff up. So the infantry was for me.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So when it was all over, was it what you thought it would be?
It's never over. I think that you know that. Other guys know that. There's always your buddies who are still over there, or folks who are struggling to deal with wounds or rebuild their lives. So I think when you get home, in some ways the fight just begins. But no, it was nothing like I imagined it. I think it was, we all have these kind of these Hollywood images of what you think combat's going to be, and I grew up watching Full Metal Jacket and Red Dawn and Platoon and all these other films, and it was definitely different. It was a lot more unpredictable. It wasn't nearly as exciting. There were lots of boring times. I think anybody who's been there understands there's huge amounts of drudgery and boredom, and every day was different. So I think that's one of the things that I've been looking for, is that first movie or film that really encapsulates our experience, and I haven't really seen a good one that's done that yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think with movies, as much as they try and project it in the theater, you can't smell it.
Yeah.
You can't feel the discomfort of just being there.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, for me, writing was therapeutic. Hanging out with the guys is obviously a part of it. But every day was different, and because we were in an infantry unit, because we were in the inner city, and because we were really attached to the 3rd Infantry Division, we were getting shuffled all around. So one day we'd be doing a raid or an ambush or a checkpoint. The next day we'd be headed out to do a school reconstruction or something else. So it was very, very unpredictable.
Right.
But it kept things interesting, that's for sure.
Hopefully it made the time go faster.
Sometimes it did, but there's a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
A lot of downtime when you guys are sitting on checkpoints and it's hot or cold, and you're staring down an empty street. But it builds bonds between the guys,
Sure.
and it makes you grateful for what you got when you come home. That's for sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
Paul, you served over there with valor, with courage, and you had a tremendous responsibility to the men in your command. And I think what a lot of Americans probably don't realize is the conditions you lived in. I mean, most dogs in America live in better conditions than you guys lived in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, my guys are a lot tougher than the average dog. But the guys in my unit were incredible people, devoted, dedicated, technically competent, really had huge hearts and took care of each other and performed under some really tough circumstances. But when you're in the infantry, you learn to embrace the suck. You learn to get used to being uncomfortable and even revel in it at times. And you make do. You find ways to get music. You find ways to have a good time. You play a lot of card games. I mean, my guys would hook up the video game systems pretty much as soon as we hit ground somehow. I don't know where the hell they got the power half the time.
Yeah.
But you find a way to make do, and I think at the end of the day, it's about the guys and about being around that unit. That's really like a tight family, and that's what gets you through even the toughest circumstances. And again, just like everything else over there, when you come home and you have air conditioning and you have your family and you have a nice bed, you appreciate it all that much more because you were sleeping on the ground,
sure.
In the hot sun for a couple of months.
Right. And the camaraderie is just, it's amazing. It's something that the average American really would never understand.
Yeah, it's almost deeper than a family bond, because it's take that high school football team you're on and mix it in with your family, and that's kind of what it's like. It's really an amazing connection you've got that stays with you. I saw my old RTO out in Los Angeles a couple weeks ago, and it's just like I saw him yesterday, and that bond is always there.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. But when it was over, all of a sudden you've got to flip the switch. No more living like an animal.
Right.
No more violence.
Right.
Done. Go home.
Right.
What was that like?
Well, I came home to New York City, so in some ways you're still living like an animal because you pay a lot of money for a small space. I mean, my apartment in Brooklyn was probably about the size of this room, so I guess it prepared me well to come back to New York. Right. But it's a hard thing, flipping the switch is a difficult thing. I was in Baghdad one week and in Brooklyn the next, and making that transition can be difficult. You spend a lot of time and money and resources getting folks ready to go to war, but not a whole lot bringing them back. So it was difficult adjusting to my family again, adjusting to driving on roads with yellow lines and rules, dealing with loud noises, all those things that kind of really tweak your spidey sense, right? While you're over there being an infantry guy. But over time, you learn to deal with it, and you learn to take care of yourself. And I took a lot of comfort and support from Vietnam vets that I knew who really helped me through that process and showed me the ropes and mentored me. Guys like our friend Shad Meshad. I mean, he's a guy who helps me keep it in perspective. And that you've got those guys and girls who've been down that road ahead of you, so you can look to them for guidance and strength. And now that's our role, is to help the folks coming home behind us. I've been home a couple of years now, and we've got vets working on staff that have been home a couple months.
Right.
So now we've got to play that leadership role, and that's part of what our work here is about at IAVA, is mentoring each other and having vets take care of vets.
Right. Having said that, at what point in time, either was it still in the service, in combat, or shortly after you got home, at what point did you decide to create an organization that served the veterans of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars?
It was a few months after I got back. I got back in the spring of '04, and we started IAVA that summer. But it was really out of necessity. I mean, we had a flat web page that initially was just paulrieckhoff.com, where I would post stories, and guys in my unit would post stories, and other guys around the country started to post their stories, and it kind of grew out of that. It was really just a glorified message board. But we started getting together early on, recognizing that there was no organization that was specifically designed for Iraq and Afghanistan vets. You had the VFW, you had the Legion, they did good work, but it wasn't really a group of organizations that were catering to our needs, talking about the fact that you had National Guardsmen involved, the fact that you had 15% women, that you had new issues like traumatic brain injury. These are the new issues that we were dealing with, and now most recently stuff like the GI Bill. So the other organizations really weren't meeting our needs, and we created our own. So go back to the old infantry phrase of adapt, improvise, and overcome. And if we didn't see something that was working, try to build your own and see where it goes. We had no idea it was going to grow this big. We didn't know it was going to turn into a national organization with thousands of members around the country. We were just a bunch of vets that were trying to get together just like you do in the military and look out for each other and work with what you've got. And initially it's a lot of bubble gum and scotch tape and begging for $5 here and $10 there. And now we've really gotten tremendous support from folks not only in New York but around the country. And as more and more folks come home from Iraq and Afghanistan, they're coming to IAVA to get information, to get support, to get resources, and it's really grown. So now, a lot of what I do is just kind of let it roll and push it in the right directions and talk to guys like you and spread the word and try to get new folks in. But it's an adaptive organization. It's an innovative organization, and we say you got to innovate or die. If you're not moving and changing to meet the needs of new vets, you're going to be obsolete. Yeah. So we really want to stay in touch with folks, and that's why we do so much stuff online. That's why we use new media and really try to connect with folks through important online communities like yours.
Right.
Because that's how we're going to reach this new generation of vets.
Right. Your organization is very proactive and productive as far as serving veterans, particularly of Iraq, Afghanistan wars. What are some of your high points, or what are you really most proud of that you've accomplished here?
I think one of the things I'm most proud of is Veterans Day every year. It's coming up soon, and this will be our 5th Veterans Day. Last year we had over 220 events around the country. And that's a day where we can put veterans on the minds of every Americans. Our goal is to make every day Veterans Day, but to be able to use online tools, to be able to use the media, and be able to use the energy of our local vets to bring people together, that's a huge thing for us. We also launched a really groundbreaking public service announcement campaign with the Ad Council that was centered around some television ads with 2 vets shaking hands in an empty street, and that's really been groundbreaking because it drives people to an online community, communityofveterans.org. We've built there kind of the virtual Veterans Hall. So if you're struggling with PTSD, you can find someone who understands. If you want to try to find a job in your area, you can find somebody who understands. And if you're trying to navigate the VA or figure out your GI Bill, that's a place where you can go where folks understand. So that's something we're really proud of. We think that's lasting, that's innovative. And I guess the last thing I would say is the GI Bill. We fought hard for a new GI Bill, got together with a lot of the other veterans organizations. Senator Webb and Senator Hagel, 2 Vietnam vets themselves, were out in front on that, and we got through a bill that will send close to 2 million vets to college. Now, there's a lot of problems with it still. A lot of vets are waiting for checks. The VAs had a hard time getting the administrative side of things in order, but no matter how you cut it, it's a really historic, transformative benefit that's going to help a lot of folks and send them to college.
Right. And I think with your organization, too, I've seen where you've taken issues and you've run with them, and you've got, like the other organizations, you got representatives in Washington,
right,
talking to congressmen.
Yep.
And this is all great. I mean, the one in particular I think of was the body armor issue earlier in the war in Iraq, where you guys really ran with that.
Yeah, we really stay in touch with our community. So in 2004, it was body armor. Last year was a GI Bill. Next year it might be jobs.
Right.
You've got to stay connected to that community so you know what the most important issues are, and then you take all the resources and all that energy and focus it like a laser on Washington, because you don't have a lot of vets serving in Congress anymore. Senators and congressmen are very unlikely to have served. The president hasn't served, so you really got to make your voice loud, and you got to be focused and smart in your strategy. And we bring vets on Capitol Hill every day. We've got Republicans and Democrats pushing for legislation. We had 32 people testify last year on Capitol Hill on various issues. So, representing the voice of millions and really continuing to bang on it hard and let folks know that you can't forget about vets. And when you're thinking about the economy and health care and all this other stuff, you got to remember that vets need to be a top priority, and that's part of what our folks in Washington do.
Absolutely. Paul, you and I are both combat infantry vets, but from 2 different wars. In Vietnam, most of the actual combat troops in the field, the higher percentage, were draftees. And today, in these wars, it's by choice. So, tell me, grunt to grunt, today, what makes a warrior? What makes a young man or woman want to put on that uniform and go over there and risk their life for their country?
I think it really does vary depending upon the person. I think there's a strong sense of service. I think especially after 9/11, you had a huge number of folks who wanted to give something back in some way. There's some folks who come from families with tradition of service. A lot of us who served in Iraq and Afghanistan are sons and daughters of Vietnam vets, so I think that's a huge connection. Some folks are looking for college money, some folks want to travel the world, some folks want to learn a skill. But I think there's something about every warrior that's cut from a different cloth. They're not the kids who want to sit on their butts and play video games for the next 10 years. They're not the folks who just want to yell at the TV and comment on history. They want to be a part of history. So it's kind of like a calling. I don't know how else to say it. When I was growing up, I used to hear about priests who said they found a calling. I think there's something about your gut that makes you want to join. But not to say that anyone is better or worse than any other generations. It's just a little different, and we have tremendous respect for every one of those guys who was drafted in Vietnam, and you guys have been really the ground pavers. You guys set us up for success. And when I first came home, I think the first week there were 2 Vietnam vets sitting on the side who walked up to me and said, "Hey man, welcome home." And I think it's a real testament to the similarities between the generations, that when we got home, you guys said never again. We're going to make sure the vets coming home this time get treated well. And the fact that we've been able to separate the war from the warriors is not really our fault or our credit. It's you guys. You guys really help separate the way people felt about the war from what's going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. So now when we come home, it doesn't matter if you're coming home to Kansas, Kentucky, or the East Village in New York City. Everybody treats you well, and I think that's something that's really really amazing to see. And it's a credit to you guys and Shad and all the other Vietnam vets who made sure that happened. And you guys saw that early, and I think we have you guys to thank for that forever.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. What do you think is America's responsibility to the warriors, to the men and women who have served, not just while they're on active duty, but when they return and go on with their lives as veterans?
I think it's about holding up their end of the deal. Vets don't view themselves as victims. They don't want a handout, but they want that promise kept that if you go into harm's way and you get hurt, you're taken care of. If you go into harm's way, your family back home is taken care of. And when you come home, you want to be able to have the same opportunities that everybody else has. You want to be able to get back into your job, go back to school. And I think programs like the GI Bill make a lot of sense because they reward service, they honor your service. But I think it's about just honoring that contract. When you raise your right hand and swear to uphold the Constitution, the United States government and the United States people really, owes you the fact they're going to take care of you. That's it. It's a social contract, a social compact that exists between the warrior and his or her country. And I think that's something you've got to remind folks about because so few of them have actually served. Less than 1/2% of the American public has served in Iraq and Afghanistan. World War II was 12%. So you could, throw a rock and hit a vet in any direction. Nowadays, it's a lot harder. So we've got to remind them what service means. You've got to remind them that there are folks, tens of thousands of folks who've been to Iraq and Afghanistan 4 times. You've got to remind them that their families are back home dealing with the same economic situations and the same healthcare problems that everybody else is, but they've got a mother or a father who's been deployed for 12 months. So, it's about reminding them of that solemn obligation. I think that's a huge part of what our work is about, and I think, your work too.
Right. Paul, it's been an honor to spend this time with you today, and I'd like to thank you.
Thank you
so
Rick.
much.
Thank you, Rick.
And keep it up.
Thank
Keep
you.
up
I've
work.
got something for you too. You got to give me a second to dig it out here. But you guys have been great about welcoming us home, and even when I first started doing this kind of work, I remember meeting you out in LA, and I want to give you a coin. And it's a thank you from us for doing the work you do, and thanks for giving the vets a voice.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming to New York.
Folks, Iraq, Afghanistan Veterans of America, go to their website, IAVA.org. It's a great organization. Thank you.
Thank you.